current MS student in the School for Conflict Analysis and Resolution at George Mason University. She received her Bachelor of Law degree with a concentration in international law from Soka University in Japan, and has since worked in the resettlement department for the Japan Association for Refugees, or JAR, one of the largest NGOs to support asylum seekers in Japan from 2011 to 2013. Minhee has been involved in many resettlement projects, including the Kurdish Women Independence Project, the development of classes for Kurdish refugee children, and disaster prevention drill programs for asylum seekers. Her current research interests include identity, culture, and asylum seekers, with specific focus with refugees in Japan. Minhee Noh.
Today I want to talk about Kurdish refugee children in Japan, about their facing to unpacking structural violence. So I want to talk about the structural violence from conflict analysis and resolution perspective. So from this topic, you have some questions: what is structural violence and why Kurdish refugee children is in Japan? So according to Colloquium, structural violence is violence which is exercised even if there are no concrete actors one can point to directly attacking others, as when one person killed others, such as poverty, war, flow, etc. So today I want to talk about structural violence, especially from policy, institution, and identity. So why I pick this topic is I have working experience at Japan Association for Refugees, and I'm mainly working for Kurdish refugees. I'm helping their resettlement in Japan. But I was really so depressed. They are right in front of me, but I couldn't help them anything. So I was so depressed, but nobody knows these issues. So that's why I pick this topic. So my native language is Korean, so I want to introduce my abstract in Korean. 지난 10년간 일본에서의 난민 신청자 수는 10배 이상 늘어나고 있습니다. 특히 일본인은 외국인들과 공존하는 것에 익숙하지 못합니다. 그로 인해 쿠르드 난민 아동들이 일본 사회로부터 부정적인 폭력에 노출되는 현실에 처해 있습니다. 이 프레젠테이션은 정체성, 기간, 정책으로부터 오는 쿠르드 난민 아동들을 향한 부정적 폭력을 다룰 것입니다. In this presentation, I want to talk about the humanitarian assistance for refugees by the Japanese government. And as a background, I want to talk about the actual situation of Kurdish refugees in Japan, and I want to analyze the structural violence for Kurdish refugees children. At the end, I want to suggestion to eliminate this structural violence. So about Japan, it's really rich country, and then we really image like there's no conflict in Japan, and then they really contribute to help for refugee issues. So in this chart show that Japan is the most second donor who donated to UN Refugees Agency next to the United States. However, by comparing to by increasing the number of refugees, they assist us only few refugees. Especially last year, Japanese government recognized refugees just 6 people. Just 6 people is really like 0.16%. So Japanese government are really positive to support refugees in other countries, but they don't support domestic refugees. So in this case, I thought there is a structural violence for domestic refugees. So my question comes up, how can structural violence theory can help us to realize about Kurdish refugee children in Japan? Regard to population of Kurdish refugees, they composite about 20% of whole refugees population in Japan. However, they are isolated between deportation and going to detention center. Even though Japan joined to the 1951 Refugees Convention, which has infraction of non-refoulement, which is not allowed to return the asylum seeker or refugees to a place where their life or liberty will be at least. But Japan doing deportation a lot, and 3 years ago, refugees from Ghana were dying on his way of deportation. It's really big issue. Regard to detention center, refugees who don't have refugee status in Japan, they have to go to detention center at least 1 to 2 years. But the detention center functions as like a prison. There's no health care, there's physical violence from immigration bureau officers. They have language barrier with officers, and they have to separate with their family. So in this situation, I want to focus on the structural violence for Kurdish refugee children from identity, institution, which is school, and policy. As a result of this structural violence, many Kurdish refugee children show their trauma. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan, the Japanese government, the Japanese government joined the United Nations Declaration of Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination in 1995, but there's only 2% of whole population is just foreign people. So the 98% of whole Japanese population is Japanese, so many Japanese are not recognized. There is foreign people, including refugees, living in Japan. Therefore, there's really no situation to make any chance of racial discrimination. So, Japanese children also ever met foreign people who have different facial appearance. So when Kurdish refugees go to public school, they're really easily bullied because they have different facial appearance, which is one of the identity. So some of Kurdish refugee children want to change their identity to integrate Japanese children community. But in this case, they would not satisfy their identity needs. The identity needs is one of the basic human needs, which is a really basic thing that human need as a living human being, according to Colloquium. Also, according to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan, the Japanese government promotes to mitigate to racial discrimination among Japanese citizens by education. In Japan, they learn about American history also. So there is Civil War, and it's one of the examples that they learn about racial discrimination, but they cannot practice about how we don't discriminate other people. So they have no awareness in Japanese daily life. Also, many schools are not responding with family with diversity. So many Kurdish children's mother cannot speak Japanese. So if they have handout from school about the announcement of children's education, parents cannot read the handout because it is Japanese. So children have to take care about their education by themselves. And then Kurdish refugee children's mothers want to talk about the children's education with teacher, but they cannot discuss. So the Kurdish refugee children have to take care about their education by themselves. Also, since 2012, Immigration Bureau started new policy, which is new residence card. This card is not provided to illegal immigrants and refugees, so that Kurdish refugee children have their own identity, but they cannot prove their identity. Also, according to Turkish embassy, the relationship between Turkey and Japan is really good economically and culturally from long times ago. However, Turkish government is antagonistic with Kurdish refugees. So in this case, if Japan accept Kurdish refugees in Japan, the relationship between Japan and Turkey is gonna be worse. So from my perspective, I think that's why Japan never recognized Kurdish refugees so far. So from these policies, Kurdish refugees have no reason to study. They don't have future unless they're recognized. So there's no motivation to study, but they have to survive to live in Japan, and they have to work for surviving, but they cannot go to university. From my working experience, I heard about this from my supervisor. Many Kurdish refugee children stop going to high school. Many Kurdish refugee girls are working as a prostitution. Kurdish refugee boys working at a construction field as illegally. So this is really structural violence from policy. This structural violence show connected to trauma. According to girl, the frustration aggression relationship provides the psychological dynamic for the proposed relationship between intensive of deprivation and the potential for collective violence. I have one example of this theory. When I working at the Japanese Association for Refugees, I had conversation with a Kurdish boy, and then we talk about family, and then he could not speak Japanese, so he drew his families on a paper like this. But he drew X on his father's face. So I asked him, why did you do this? For it's your father. And then he drew another thing. He drew his father's in a jail. And actually, his father is a detention center because his father had no refugee status in Japan. It's not illegal. But the children cannot understand the whole process of refugees progress in Japan. So he believed that his father is in jail, even though his father did not wrong things. So my suggestion to eliminate structural violence from identity is need and offers dialogue. It's one of the facilitation activity, and then the Japanese children and then Kurdish children have dialogue, and then they talk about what they need each other's, and then they can offer for each other. Also, for eliminating structural violence from institution, one of my project that I've done was Japanese language education for Kurdish women, so that they can go forward to integrate into the Japanese society. Also, for eliminating structural violence from policy, the current refugees role never consider about refugees in Japan. So my former organization did working for new refugees law. So how might this research help to improve the Kurdish refugee children issues in Japan? In Japan, there is less development of field of conflict resolution and refugee studies. So based on my experience, I can apply my narrative perspective to this academic field, and then so that I can help people to improve awareness about refugees issue. Thank you so much. I'm ready to answer any questions.